Welcome to Dog on the Plot. I'm Kerry, this is Dory, and this is our first plot tour of 2025. And I'll also be revealing some exciting plot news. Now, in fact, there's only ever been one other tour of the plot, and that was when I first got it. It was before Mark and I did anything at all, even brought anything down from the old plot. So it was just as I got it. And that was 4 months ago? Hang on. Yes, it's been exactly 4 months. So we got the new plots at the end of October. We started moving everything off from the beginning of November, and it took us the full 2 months that we had to do the transition. So it was a New Year's Day that we were finally completely finished with bringing everything over from the old plots to the new plots. And since then, we've been working on making them our own. So if we start our tour at the very front of the plot, one of the first things that I did was dig a trench along the whole of the front of the plot and put in all the spring bulbs that I had that were left over from pots and things that I'd had in the garden. So they're a real mix of things. I have no idea what they are, although I can now see as they come up that I've definitely got tulips, I've definitely got crocuses, and I'm pretty sure I had a couple of bags of daffodils left over that went in the trench as well. So I'm really looking forward to a few weeks now, and this hopefully being a blaze of colour. Another thing we did pretty early on was decide where the paths were going to go. So they've roughly stayed about the same. I've just kind of shifted some up and down and made some paths in between. So I had pretty big squares of growing space, but actually what I learnt from my old plot is that you don't want to be walking all over the beds, especially when they're clay soil. So I've been busy making some little additional paths, and I was able to do this because about 2 weeks ago, I was walking the dog and I saw somebody cutting down trees and chipping them. And I did what I always do when I see someone chipping trees. I go over and ask them if they wouldn't mind dropping them off at the allotment. And in this case, they didn't. Now, it isn't the best wood chip in the world, but it is perfectly okay for paths. And I think I had about 8 barrows worth, but I offered it out to the rest of the site as well. So I've got my little pile of wood chip and got loads left, but I've made all the little paths that I think I want to do. Now, I made these paths last week, and I think it was actually this middle one that we started with. So my cousin Becky was down here, and I told her my idea about splitting this bed into 2 and just having a path that ran all the way down the middle. But then I remembered that I wanted this archway tunnel going along the centre of the plot and up into the greenhouse. So I didn't really want a path that would go all the way to this path because that would interrupt the tunnel. So I put the arches up just to be able to visualise it. They need a lot more securing. They're very broken. So I'm going to be repairing those with bamboo canes, but then I'm going to do what I did on the old plot, which is thread the bamboo canes through the slats all the way around and then put the jute netting over, so you get that tunnel effect. So once we realized that that wasn't going to be the right way to put the path, then I thought about, well, if you're going to have beans or whatever growing up here, you want to be able to pick them. So you really need something where you can walk along next to the tunnel. So this is what we came up with, which is the T-shape. Now, this is made from the slate that was my old roof. So if you remember, at the end of my 12 days of Easter, I was suddenly having my roof replaced, and I asked the builders to save me all the slate from the roof. Do I regret this decision now that I have an entryway that's absolutely packed full of slate? Yeah, maybe a little bit, but actually it's been coming in handy. So I use it for labels for the plants. but I've also used it in the home garden as edging for borders. And I thought, what a great material to use for these paths. So these can be the edging for the paths. So my cousin and I, we measured from either end of the bed. So it should be nice and central. I'm not sure quite how straight these all are, but they are central. And we place the slate in kind of overlapping bits to create the borders. Then we placed down cardboard underneath to suppress any weeds, and then put the wood chip on top and kind of stamped it down. But I think it works really well. It's cost nothing. You know, these were all materials that I had for free. The other thing that I think might be really cool about this is that I could use it as a composting path. So you could chop and drop things straight into this path, have it compost down, and then it goes in and feeds the soil. What I don't want, of course, is for it to be an absolute slug trap. So we'll have to see about that. But the good thing I think about this too is that if I do decide this was a terrible idea, I can just lift it all up and get rid of it. So once we'd finished that one and figured out that it worked and it looked all right, I carried on and I did the one opposite. And then at the front of the plot, instead of doing a T shape, I just did a L shape because I didn't want to go into the spring bulbs at the front of the plot. But again, if I want to extend it to the front of the plot once the bulbs are over, I can just do that. Got plenty more slate, plenty more wood chip. And then for these 4 beds here, I've just divided those into 2. So they've just got a little path that goes up the middle to the greenhouse then. I mean, Mark isn't entirely convinced, but he never really is with the stuff that I do. And you may have noticed that the balls have appeared, and that's another thing that Mark isn't that keen on my plot. But I tell you what, when I put those balls up, it was like, yes, this is my plot now. And the balls are here because I've put some of my broad beans in. We're due really nice weather this weekend, and although cold weather is still coming, we're still going to have some -1 temperatures next week. I thought this was a good time to get them in so they can kind of acclimatise, get their roots in a little bit before the cold weather comes. When it does, I might fleece them. But yeah, I put the bamboo canes round ready for supporting them as they get a little bit bigger. And safety first, the balls are on the canes. Now, instead of putting all the broad beans into just one of these beds and having it as a kind of monoculture in that bed, what I've decided to do is dot them around the plot. So this is the start of thinking about each of these beds as its own polyculture. So it'll be combined with other crops. So I've put 5 broad beans in each of these spots. I've not made them exactly symmetrical. I thought that might be going a little bit too far. So I've kind of just dotted them around, and we'll see how they do. I'm slightly worried about pigeons, and you'll see why in a moment. But Mark's got his broad beans out and they have not been pigeoned. So fingers crossed, because I haven't got anything that's the right kind of shape to go over those. I guess I could just kind of drape some netting over. I might risk it for a biscuit though. Speaking of covers, you may have noticed that the big covers that Graham had made, Graham who had the plot before me, are gone. And that's because they're ugly, but also they're just too big for me to move on my own. So I didn't feel that they were practical. Plus, because I've moved slabs and made different paths, they don't actually fit over the beds anymore. Keen-eyed of you will also notice that they're just there. So one of my plot neighbours at the weekend, she asked me about protecting her broad beans, I think it was actually. And I said, well, do you want one of those to do it? And she's like, sure, they're great. And I'm like, do you want them all? And she said, sure. And that's how I got rid of them. Now, will I regret this in the summer when they have perfectly protected crops and mine have all been eaten by pigeons? Maybe, maybe. Now I think the only other thing that's planted down here, this side of the greenhouse, is this marshmallow. And we planted this together. If you remember, we did it in a rather random way. But it turned out it was exactly where the path needed to go. So I actually lifted it and replanted it in this corner. And I've just given it a water actually, because marshmallow likes to be moist and you need to keep it well watered. So I've just done that. It looks alive. I'm thinking marshmallow is pretty indestructible. I'm hoping anyway. Oh, when I was digging up there, if you remember, I dotted some field beans about as well. And when I was digging here, I found some of the beans and they were rooting. So none have popped up yet, but they are producing roots. So hopefully in a few days, we might see some shoots of the field beans coming up. Now, I don't think there's too much to report on in terms of the greenhouse because I've done nothing. So it's got no glass in it. It's got no footings yet. But what I have been doing is collecting some bricks so I can make a base for the greenhouse with the bricks. And then once that's done, I can start thinking about putting the glass in. I would appreciate some of your advice on making this base for the greenhouse. Is bricks the way to go? I've got wood, but I didn't really want to make a base of wood because that's going to invite slugs. Or do I just leave it on the soil? Is that a bad idea? I don't know. Let me know what you think. Now, slightly randomly, there is actually something growing in this greenhouse and I can just see one there and there's one over there. They're the only two that I can see right now, but they are elephant garlic. So you might remember that I planted up this bed as it was with garlic, onions and elephant garlic, maybe some shallots, I can't remember now. But that was before I decided where the greenhouse was going to go. So then the greenhouse got placed here. So the elephant garlic is now inside the greenhouse. But on the other side, we have the regular garlic and some onion sets. And these did not do anything for so long. And I'd kind of given up on them. And then suddenly they're up. And yeah, really happy with that. So the garlic looked great. The onions, I've not had much luck with onions from sets, onions full stop. So we'll see how they fare. But I've just got this mesh on top to kind of protect them from being pulled out by the birds. I'm not sure it's doing that much protecting, but so far they're still in the ground. Now this is a little bit sad because this was one of the first things that I planted up. I put the brassicas from the old plot into this long bed and I had them covered. And I decided that most of them were bolting anyway, and I'd harvested there were a couple of Romanescos, I harvested those. And I thought, well, the pigeons can kind of have them now, and I wanted to wash the netting. Turns out my washing machine is a bit small for the extra large Enviromesh. It smells really nice now, but it doesn't look any cleaner. But I took them off, I took them home to clean, did not cover them. The pigeons did come along and eat them all, which is fine, it's what I was allowing. I really should have covered this one at the end. Is the Austerian tree cabbage, which is a perennial, and so I didn't really want it to be decimated by pigeons, so I should have covered that one. Entirely my own fault. There should have been 9-star broccolis in here as well, but they never seemed to materialise. It was like Cavolo Nero, the Romanescos, but I feel like that should have been one. So maybe I'll keep those two, take the rest out now. And I have plans for this bed because the pallet collars here, I think will fit nicely as little beds along, and then you can walk in between them. I do need to move that path a little bit further back though in order to accommodate them. But yeah, that's a project on the horizon. I'm going to do that quite soon. So that brings us to the Fruit Tree Guild. Have I done anything with it since we did it together? Yes, I put comfrey in at the end. So it turns out this side of the bed, pretty shady. Who would have thought with this polytunnel here? Clearly not me. So I moved the black currant or red currant, whatever it is, from there to there. and I put the comfrey at the end instead because that won't mind the shade. Hopefully that comfrey will be okay. Again, like the marshmallow, I think it's pretty thuggish and it should be fine. Trees are fine, I've pruned them, so that's all done. The raspberries in between, I did have a second thought about this because I just watered them. My thinking of putting them in between the trees was when the trees get a little bit longer, you can kind of use those as the supports with the raspberries in between. So you can put like string around and keep the raspberries up. But actually to pick the raspberries, it's just a little bit far over and I think you're going to end up stepping on the bed. But anyway, that's a future problem. Oh, what I did along here was I found a bag of hollyhock seed in the shed and it'd been in the shed all winter. And I thought, well, let's just throw it around and see if anything happens. So I did that. I threw it all the way down there. So we might have loads of hollyhocks. We may have none. Now the back beds seem to just be surrounded by wood. This needs tidying. But the josterberries at the end is doing fantastically. I also pruned that. I took out some of the old canes and just cut down some of the new ones. I've still got strawberries all in these beds. They need a massive sort out. It's a job that I have not done. I have not done it. I need to do it. And then the last one is the asparagus bed, which doesn't have very good asparagus in. Behind the polytunnel is just a storage area. I've got the bathtub here, some bits and pieces. These are supposed to make a brassica cage. I don't think they're going to be doing that. And while we're looking at messy areas, here is the bed. Still got it. Sorry, Mark. Still got the bed. And I've put all the pallets that were holding the black plastic down on the plot. I've put them all on there. I got rid of one. So the person who took the covers also took a pallet, and I'm trying to get rid of the rest because I don't think that I need them. Mark might use them to make some more compost bays actually, so we'll see. Oh, and I don't think I'm going to keep this water butt here because it's a bit ugly. What I think I'll do is bring the bath and put that behind the greenhouse and then have water feed in from either side into the bath, and then that will be my water point at this bit. So that brings us to the polytunnel. Now the polytunnel is pretty planted up. I don't think there's much spaces at all now. So I've got my salad bar down this end. It's got oriental greens, it's got lettuces, it's chard, there's mizuna and bits and pieces here. It's all going really well. And then I planted up the rest with brassicas that I just had hanging around. Will they do much? I don't know. But their roots in the ground, they're feeding the soil, so I'm all happy with that. I put in a row of radish here, but nothing has come up yet. And then I think this is the 9-star broccoli, in which case I'm going to try and keep that alive and hopefully transplant it onto the plot a little bit later in the season. Now I do still have six buckets of potatoes. Oh my goodness. So I'm going to empty one of those and we're going to take some potatoes home today. Now the back of the plot is a little bit of a mess. There's a lot going on over here. Eventually I do want to clear all of this out and I might put the bed here. It's going to be shady, so I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, first of all, it just needs clearing and assessing. There's loads of the rabbit poop up there ready for the compost bays. I have got my bucket with my rhubarb in and that's coming up. I mean, there's a lot of rhubarb around here anyway, but that's my own that I grew from seed. So I've got that one. We've got the IBC here, which is full, but I can't really work out how to get the water out of it. So I need to look into that. And then the greenhouse. And there's not much to show you in here. I've got the Taunton kales that I'm propagating. They're doing fine. In fact, while we've got this warm weather, I might bring those out of the greenhouse. And these are the Australian tree cabbages I mentioned. And I noticed this earlier today, which I had on my sowing list for March, tree spinach. Well, I won't be bothering. They're coming up in this pot and there's about 20 in there and probably the same in there. So I think I'll have plenty of tree spinach without having to sow any fresh. And the last bit to show you, which is kind of more shared space, is this, which is the cardoon bed, which we don't think will remain as a cardoon bed. We think we want this as our social area, but they're growing amazingly. It's going to be a real shame to dig them out. But I think what I'll probably do is move some onto the beds. And then there's the compost heaps at the back, and I've been filling these too. So I've been putting rabbit poop in, but we also had the first mow at the church last week. So I brought the grass clippings down and popped them in there as well. So it's great to be making compost ready for the beds. Now there is compost in these other ones. I haven't really assessed how great it is yet, but I'm hoping it's going to be good, and I can start moving some of that onto the beds. So Mark and I are sharing this plot, but this is my half and this is Mark's half. Of course, he's been super busy on his side as well. So these beds he's covered over, but these ones he's planted up. So he's got his broad beans in this one. He's got the herb beds on his side of the plot. He's got garlic and brassicas in. And of course, at the back, you can see he put up a polytunnel. He put together a greenhouse, made a base for it and everything. So that's up there. And behind those is the wildlife area. I apologise if I'm shouting a bit, but there's been this helicopter going over the entire time I'm trying to do this tour. And it's getting dark now because I had to wait ages because there were quite a lot of people down here. So yeah, we're battling the light now. So this is kind of the wildlife area. It's full of fruit bushes. There's an apple tree here. Mark's put in his ornamental beehives. I've been using this space to put the wood chip because this is a kind of empty space. The rhubarb is there. Now we haven't done anything with this at all. We've not pruned the bushes. There's a little mini pond back there. We've done nothing with that either. So this area is going to need some attention at some point. But for me, I like it as this little wild spot where we can encourage wildlife. I brought down some of the, what do they call those on the roof? I forget now. Anyway, they're little domey things, and I thought we could make like a hedgehog house out of them. So that's my vision for it, but I think Mark might have a different vision for it, and it is technically on his side of the plot. So we'll see what happens with this space. Your suggestions are very welcome. Now, if you've been waiting very patiently for me to reveal the plot news that I teased at the beginning of the episode, well, it's coming up. So this half of the plot next to mine and Mark's, my sister took. So it came up when we were negotiating this space, and Mark asked the steward if we could have this corner as well. And we put it in my sister's name, and she wants to use it to grow flowers. You have seen in an earlier episode that Mark bought this. Well, he didn't buy it. It was absolutely free. He got it off Facebook Marketplace. So he went and collected this absolutely enormous greenhouse that we're calling the Greenhouse Mansion. All of this is covered in black plastic because it was really grassy, really uneven as well. So we're kind of using it as a bit of a dumping ground at the moment. But this side, so this part, not ours, this part belonged to somebody else. They paid up for the year. And Mark had a little word in the steward's ear to say that if it were ever to come up, then he would be very interested in taking that part of that plot on as well. And it happened. So just last week, we found out that this guy was giving up the plot, and Mark snapped it up. So this whole stretch now will be in my sister's name. My sister is now taking the back half of the plot to do her flower garden, and Mark is going to use this side of the plot. And what we thought, actually, because it's not really workable yet, this one has been covered in black plastic since, gosh, this time last year, I think, whereas we only got the black plastic on this just before Christmas. So there's still a lot of killing off of grass to do on this side, but this side is workable. So yeah, my sister's going to take the back part for her flower garden. The greenhouse is going to go in the middle here. He's already put this, well, this is a temporary path, but there will be a path coming down here. And then, yeah, I suggested that he do what Charles Dowding just did, which was have that stretch that's covered in black plastic, make holes, grow pumpkins in it. Once the pumpkins are done, take the black plastic off, sow a cover crop, take that out the next year, and you've got mint ground to grow in. That's the idea anyway. So we'll see if he does that. But in the meantime, he's been getting on with this side. Now you can see from the bags of rubble there that there's been a lot of clearing to do. So he took up the black plastic, he started cutting back back here. So there were more trees here. And oh yeah, there was also this really ugly, awkward structure made of poles. So we took all that down. And yeah, it's been working really hard. Started rotivating mainly so he could build this path. And oh my God, what a game changer this path is. So now we come down from the main path. You can come straight along here to the shed, to the whole hub of our 3 plots now. We are slightly taking over, I think. But it's great. It's so exciting. A quick interruption to the plot tour. We're a couple of days into the future and I wanted to talk about these trees, and you saw Mark sawing away at these trees in the previous footage, and indeed we were using the saw, we were using pruners, well, loppers and secateurs in order to try and cut down these trees, along with this contraption that Graham had left on the plot and is like a long pole secateurs with this little thing on the end. So if I just demonstrate, and this was the issue. It does work, but it's not easy. And I've been really fortunate to have been sent something to review that is going to make light work of these trees. So now in place of all of these tools, I've got this. It's from Prunarbo and it's an electric pruner. Now you've seen me making hard work of pruning in the past, and I don't have a lot of upper body strength. And this is just a flick of a button. And actually I was thinking it would be really great for my mom, who suffers from arthritis in her hands and finds pruning quite difficult. And this, it's just a flick. So this is now set to the 30mm cut. And so that's a slightly shorter distance between the 2 blades. And if I just pop that there, oh my God. Now, yeah, is the first time I've had a go with this. So you saw it in real time. That was incredible, wasn't it? Just do these little ones. Wow. Oh, let's do this one. Here we go. Nothing. There's nothing to it. Amazing. Now, the thing that sets the Prunarbo apart is if you hold this down for 3 seconds, makes a little beep. And did you see that it opened wider there? And now it should cut up to 50mm. Now, I'm not good at judging what 50mm is. And if I take this down, it might fall on top of you. Let me move you and then have a go. Right, I'm hoping this is 50mm and I don't break it immediately. Oh my goodness. Mark was sawing these trees for so long the other day, and I've just done it like that. I can't actually get it down. Oh, there we go, there we go. Oh, timber. Now, the other really cool thing about this, it comes with an absolutely huge extension pole. And if I go right up here, oh, the sun's in my eyes, let me go this way. Let's go right up here. And I mean, this is not even nearly as much as it can extend. Oh, Mark is going to be so chuffed with me doing this. Such light work. Incredible, incredible. Let's do that really thick bit. I think it's still at the 50mm. Amazing. So I think it's pretty clear I'm impressed with the Prunarbo electric pruning shears, and they come with 2 batteries, which I think is really cool because most tools you do not get 2 batteries with. It also makes it easy because you can keep one on the telescopic pole and one on the actual pruner if you wanted. It also came with things like a spare blade and a sharpening tool and some oil. So I was really, what are you doing, Dory? Really impressed by all the bits and pieces that you got with it as well. So if you're interested, I'll drop a link in the description below. Now back to the video. So that was the big plot news, and I wonder how many of you guessed that that's what it would be. Now, the only thing we need now is my cousin to get that plot next to mine. Wouldn't that be awesome? We'll have the whole length of this allotment in the end. Right, let's harvest some potatoes. Now, the ones in the home garden that were first earlies and stored in the shed, some of them had gone soft, but these seem okay. Yeah, not too bad. A little bit of nibbling. There's lots of worms in here and a big spider. Hello, spider. But they seem okay, don't they? Yeah. They're funny shapes. These are the Sarpamira. There's quite a few small ones. Look. Right, let's get a pot. Now that was a bit of a whirlwind tour while we raced against the light, but I hope that's caught you up on a little bit of the things that we've been doing on the plot and our big plot news. But still loads to do. But yeah, it really feels like it's our plots now and putting our mark on them. So take care, and I hope to see you next week.